Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Let's Go Places, a show that I am very proud to state that I've been doing now for more than 12 years here on WBCB 1490 AM. You, as a listener, you know all about WBCB radio on the AM, but now the FM dial as well, 107.3 on the FM dial. I want to thank Paul Muller, our sponsor for all of our shows. Obviously, Let's Go Places is how we began, the anniversary show. I call it an anniversary show. But every show we do is an anniversary.
Yeah.
But we have two other shows as well, Behind the Badge and Justice for All, where we bring our district attorney on, Jennifer Shorn. It began with Matt Weintraub, who is now one of our illustrious judges in Bucks County. And Fred Herron, Behind the Badge. I began that show. That's about 4 years old now, when Fred Herron, prior to his office that he holds at the present, he was the director of public safety in Ben Salem Township. Did a great job down there. My good friend Bill McVeigh. Hi, Bill, if you're listening in. Bill is now the director of public safety down there. We have a lot of great opportunities to work, I do, with Bill McVeigh, being a retired police officer. Charlie.
I ran into Bill at the police officer's Roman's funeral.
Oh, did you? Oh, God bless the family of Officer Roman.
It was nice.
Yeah.
Nice tribute.
Yeah, it's a shame that's not one reason that we're happy about getting together on, that's for sure. But Charlie Esposito, my sidekick here, my co-host, who's the president of the Retired Police, Fire, and Correctional Officers in Philadelphia. We do a lot of work. Charlie is also a board member, as I, for the Bucks County Tour of Honor, which often we talk about. And now I will introduce to you a very special guest. I mean this sincerely. Her parents are very good friends of mine, and we have the opportunity to give you, well, we don't, but Laura will give you some insight and great information on a special form of law that she practices to help the victims of crimes. Laura, say hello to our audience, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm Laura Laughlin. I'm an attorney in Philadelphia, and like Tom said, I focus my practice on representing survivors and victims of crime in civil cases for monetary compensation.
Absolutely. It's so important. We don't hear too much. We hear often about a crime being committed, the criminals, whether it's a misdemeanor of all the different levels, classifications, felonies, murder, and it draws attention to the media. Obviously, it's a favorism of theirs, and it's a shame that often when we catch these culprits, obviously they become I hate to use the word star, but they get exposure that I wish we never give them, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the representation of the defense attorneys that represent them, so that our prosecution can make certain that we bring enough probable cause, and for the jury or for the judge to decide the fate of these criminals. But what about the victims? This is what we're going to talk about today, because it's so imperative for you as our listener to understand. Maybe you or yourself, a family member, a neighbor, a friend, may have been the victim of a crime. And this is where Laura comes in. 13 years of experience, correct, Laura?
Yeah, it'll be 13 in November.
God bless you. God bless you.
Time flies.
You're only 22. I don't understand.
She started at 9 years of age.
9 years.
Right, I'm the Doogie Howser of law. If you
There
remember
you
Doogie
go.
Howser back with the...
Sure.
You like that, Bree? The Doogie Howser of law. That's pretty good. So we have a lot of questions that I believe that, thanks to you, you've submitted to me, so that the answers are most important.
Mm-hmm.
And for our listeners to listen in carefully. Grab a notepad, write some things down, because you're going to learn a lot about another form, another fabric of
and you never
crime.
know.
You never know.
We don't want anybody to fall into this category, but at least they'll have some idea.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's begin, Laura, with the one very important question. What kind of lawyer are you, and what drew you to this aspect of law?
Sure. So I would say, big umbrella like catastrophic injury attorney, like people think of personal injury attorney. I frankly hate that term because
Sure.
it reminds me of ambulance chasers, and that's not what I do. What my focus has been under that larger umbrella is representing victims and survivors of crime, like I said before, in civil cases for monetary compensation. So a lot of people think when a crime happens, there's a perpetrator. There's somebody that you see, like you said, on the news
Sure.
that committed the crime. But there's typically, if you take a step back, a bigger part at play. How did that perpetrator, how was he allowed or she allowed to commit that crime? And there's usually somebody else, like whether it's a school, a group home, or some other entity that didn't have the proper policies, procedures, training in place to prevent this crime from happening. And so that's what I do. It's making bigger changes, not just for the perpetrator, but getting a survivor justice, monetary compensation that can cover things like therapy bills, future therapy treatment. A lot of times, someone who is abused or assaulted, they may have been on a path to go to college, and now they're really struggling, and they're not going to go to college anymore. They're going to be working, a lower end wage job and stuff. And so what I do is try and get them monetary compensation for what they've been through so that they can heal and do better in the future, as well as making changes, institutional changes, to help this not happen to anybody else.
The difference between criminal and civil, which is a lot of times to discern between the two, is important as well. If you could give us your perspective on.
Sure. So in the criminal system, it's the government, like the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania here, bringing a case against the person who committed the crime. Whereas in the civil case, it's actually the victim, the survivor, or if they're
Sure.
a minor, their family, bringing the case for them. And so in the criminal aspect, the government, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the prosecutor, they have the control. They're the ones making the decisions,
Sure.
which is hard for a survivor, especially
course.
a lot of the cases I handle are survivors of sexual abuse and sexual assault. And so in those crimes, that victim never got a choice. They never got the autonomy to be able to say no, or this is not what I want to do. And so in the civil system, they get that opportunity to make that choice. Do I file a lawsuit? Do I use my real name? Do I settle the case? Do I go to trial? In the criminal aspect, also, there's a different burden of proof. So in criminal cases, it's beyond a reasonable doubt, which is our highest burden in the any justice system. In the civil system, it's a preponderance of the evidence. So if you look at those scales of justice,
Sure.
and if it tips ever so slightly in favor of my client, we win the case. There's a lower standard. The last thing is in the criminal system, it's looked at punishing the offender, jail time, probation, whatever that is,
Right,
to
right.
protect the general public. In the civil system, it is set up and designed to be able to compensate the survivor, to give them the tools that they need in order to, like I said, heal and go on to live a successful life.
Sure. There's a lot to consume here. Obviously, there's control mechanisms, as you pointed out, with the criminal aspect of it. Let's talk about some of the time frames there are. Often, there may be a period of time where the victim didn't really realize the aspect of getting some type of support.
Fear.
So, and
Yes.
obviously, it
Fear.
could be fear as well. They just wanted to rest and go away. That's where you come in, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And so you're exactly right. Most survivors, especially child sexual abuse survivors, they don't disclose until much, much later in life.
Yeah.
There's something in the law called a statute of limitations, which is the time period that you can file a lawsuit in court.
Right.
On the criminal side, they also have statute of limitations for most crimes. How long is it until they can file the charges against the perpetrator? It's not forever. Some things are very short. For adults in Pennsylvania, for example, it's 2 years. So even adults, after being sexually assaulted, they don't come forward right away. The actual reporting rate is very, very low. I think
And
it's less than
embarrassment. They have to deal with somewhat of embarrassment.
That's
Of
the
course.
problem too, Charlie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of child survivors of sexual abuse and sexual assault, there's this grooming process, which we'll talk about later, which silences a victim and makes them question, was I actually abused? Was it my fault? And not come forward. The average age of disclosure for child sexual abuse survivors isn't until 52 years old. And so, one thing that
Wow.
I want a lot of listeners to know is like there is a time limit to filing a claim. There is a little bit longer for child survivors, and I know a lot of activists in the legislature have been pushing Pennsylvania in particular to open up a window to allow child survivors where that time period has passed to file a claim. That
Sure.
hasn't happened yet, so if you vote or you see that on the ballot coming up, make sure you're voting to
By all
support
means.
survivors.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so, that's kind of, it can vary depending on what happened, but there are time limits to filing a civil lawsuit. So if you think that you've been injured, definitely contact a lawyer like me or somebody else sooner rather than later.
Important. Very important. The process from start to finish, obviously, that's another good question to bring out. When does it begin? How long is it involved? And apparently there's variations depending on the scale, depending on the severity of a case, correct?
Sure. And so there are times where there is going to be a corresponding criminal case, like
Okay.
the perpetrator of the abuse or the assault, they are being charged criminally. It doesn't happen that often,
Right.
but sometimes there is. In those situations, really the way that I work is like in line. I want the same outcome that the police or the prosecutor or the DA does.
Right.
I want these bad people behind bars so they
Yeah.
can't hurt anybody else.
Sure.
But so typically if there is a criminal case pending, I'll try and wait. I'll stay kind of in the back so I don't mess up anything. I've seen in situations where a criminal case is going to trial against the perpetrator and they have the victim up on the stand. And the criminal defense attorney, I know they're just doing their job, but they're cross-examining them on the stand like, you hired a lawyer, didn't you? You want him to be convicted because you're going to get money out of this, aren't you? And so I don't want any reason in a jury's mind or anybody else that the reason that this person needs to go away is because there's some financial incentive.
Of
I
course.
want them to be able to do their job and get the conviction if this person really did do that crime. So after that process is over, assuming we're still within the statute of limitations, sometimes I can't wait because the statute of limitations is coming and they need justice in the civil system too.
Of course.
And so if there's no criminal process, just to be clear, even if there is no criminal process, there's no one ever convicted or pleading guilty to a crime, you can still have a civil case.
That's important too. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's those different burdens of proof and kind of a different lens in how we're looking at the case.
Correct.
And so just because there's not a criminal conviction or they never charge the perpetrator does not mean you don't have a civil case.
Correct. That's a good point,
That
Charlie.
happens a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, we see, not to jump back to the beginning. The beginning, you were investigating the problems that cause the criminals, and you didn't mention parents. And sometimes it's the parents. And I noticed lately that they're arresting some of the parents of the criminals, like the kids that did the shooting.
Yes.
And the son of the
Sure.
that tried to assassinate. He was arrested. So now it looks like they're going after the parents a little bit too. And I don't want to say any parents go to jail because we're all parents and our kids do bad things. But if it's so far fetched like it is in some of these cases, I think it's proper to go after the parents.
Does coercion come into it where parents may be giving so much poisoned information to the victim? Do you see that occur often?
I don't see it as much in the abuse context.
Okay.
What you're talking about, I think, is like these mass shooting situations. Like, it's a big problem in the United States, as we see across the United States. There's kids that don't have the proper mental health treatment and support that are getting access to guns, and then horrible, horrible things are happening. And so I have seen in the last probably couple of years parents now being charged. And I think it's kind of that big picture part about, like, was there somebody else that holds responsibility for the crime and what they're doing?
Boy, that must take a lot of investigating and digging to make certain that you bring enough evidence to a jury or to a judge to find them rightfully wrong.
Some of these children are victims.
Oh, yeah, absolutely they
So
are.
there's a possibility that they could sue the perpetrator, like in some of these shootings and other things that are happening. That's what the point I was trying to make. I didn't try to throw you off.
Oh, no, you
base
didn't.
or nothing. Yeah.
No, and the other thing is, if a criminal doesn't have, if there's an award given, and there's monetary, it becomes monetary, rightfully so. Where does that money come from? I mean, that's another great question, I'm sure.
It is, yeah. And so not every crime that happens is going to result in a civil case. The justice you can get in a civil case is monetary compensation,
Right.
getting money
Yes.
for what you've been through. However, you need to get money from somewhere, and there's a lot of perpetrators, they don't have anything.
Right.
And so that's why the cases that I typically handle will be against a larger institution. You're saying not necessarily that someone was acting intentionally or criminally, but they were negligent, they were careless. Like I said, if you have... I have a case now involving a school where there are like 3 different teachers in a period of 5 years that were abusing kids. And so that's clearly, all the teachers are wrong for doing that, clearly, but there's a bigger issue at play there.
Yeah, of course. You're listening to Laura Laughlin. Very interesting area of law that she practices to defend, the victims of crime. We're going to take a quick pause. Then we're going to get right back to Laura because we have a lot more to cover.
Sounds good.
Could be part 1, part 2, as I said. There's so many questions that rise, but we'll get right back to you. Don't go anywhere. WBCB will return very shortly.
Hi, Paul Muller here, and there's never been a better time to be part of the team. New car inventory is back. We have over 100 new Toyotas ready to drive home today with some of our most popular models available. And with a huge selection of dependable certified used Toyotas, our pre-owned departments are ready to make a deal that works for you. Plus, our award-winning service centers will have you in and out and back on the road in no time. Visit one of our 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton, or online at teamtoyota.net.
Are you a parrot head? Not that kind. That's more like it. If you're this kind of parrot head, don't forget to check out the Denny-O Polka Show every Saturday from 9 a.m. to noon right here on 1490 WBCB and online at WBCB1490.com.
Hi, this is Mayor Jeff Martin of Hamilton Township, inviting you to tune in to our monthly radio show, This Month in Hamilton. Video stream live the 4th Tuesday of every month at 10 a.m. at WBCB1490.com. We will be featuring various guests from Hamilton Township to keep you up to date on what's going on in Hamilton.
Hello, everyone. Let's Go Places Now has returned, brought you back into we're coming into your living room or kitchen or wherever you may be sitting on that 3rd or 4th cup of coffee.
Or the porch.
That's your 2nd cup of coffee.
I know.
I just had my 1. That's enough, or I'll be running all over the place. But our guest here, a very special guest, Laura Laughlin, who represents victims of crimes, and a lot more to talk about.
Yes.
Where do we begin? Well, we're talking about the funding. If in the event there is probable, reason to get some type of a return,
Right.
monetarily, for the victim of a crime that was committed.
Yeah, and so what I do is, there has to, like I was saying, there has to be somewhere to be able to get that money from.
Yes.
A lot of bad people out there, they don't have anything.
No.
You can't get blood from a stone, as they say.
Sure.
And so a lot of places, whether it's schools, group homes, hospitals, any entity, like I said, that could be responsible, a shopping center. If there is, dim lighting and there's prior crimes in the shopping center, it's not just abuse and assault that I handle, but like I've had shooting cases, for
Sure.
example. Someone gets robbed and shot and killed or hurt or something like that. If there was a reason that someone should have been on notice that something bad could occur and they don't take steps to stop it, that's the kind of stuff that I handle. And so no matter what, most entities are going to have insurance.
Sure.
Because we're not saying that they intentionally harmed someone. We're saying that they were careless. That
Indirect negligence.
Right.
How do you like that?
Right, there you go. It's
Pretty much what it is.
yeah, it's negligence is just the fancy legal word for carelessness.
Carelessness. You're
and
right.
so, you're not throwing anybody in jail, you're not taking away anybody's rights, but, when someone does something and is careless and someone gets harmed because of it, they should be compensated for it.
Restitution. You're
right.
right.
And so there's that insurance policy. It's not like they're paying it out of their pockets. And unfortunately, what we've seen over many, many years of cases is that no change actually happens until you, quote unquote, hit them where it hurts, which is in their pockets, which
Yes.
is in the insurance policies.
Yes.
And so that's finally, although money is never going to take away what happened to somebody, it can provide for things, like I said, therapy and helping them to move forward from this.
Interesting.
Let me go out in left field for a second.
You're out in left field.
All the time.
Yeah, all the time. Right.
The one gentleman that got killed and the two people that got wounded at that assault attempt, assassination attempt, they are capable of filing a lawsuit, aren't they?
So
for neglect?
It depends on...
Or is that stretching it a little?
Well, I think to, kind of throw into that situation and think creatively, because just because you think there might not be a case, I look at every aspect and is there somebody else? And so in a situation like that, the person who would attempt this assassination probably has nothing.
Well, he's not with us anymore.
Oh, okay.
They shot him.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, even if someone is no longer alive, there's an estate that doesn't end things just because somebody passes away. But a perpetrator themselves typically aren't going to have something. But you, like I said, take a step back, and is there somebody else? Was there a security issue? That's
what I'm talking about. The CIA or the people that were protecting the president, Secret Service.
Secret Service.
Oh, are they?
I guess,
could they be
is there
liable?
immunity?
Could
They
they be
be liable
responsible?
for lack of,
Negligence?
negligence.
To
So
a degree.
generally speaking, governments usually
I
have...
know we're out on a limb here.
That's
And I know
okay.
we're
I'm
off
jumping
your-
on there with
we're
you.
off your given path.
It's a good point, though, right, Laura?
Yeah, and so the concept, though, is correct. However, most government entities, like the Secret Service, FBI, there's probably some protections in place that you can't sue them. But just say there was a private security company hired to keep people safe. Absolutely, 1,000% that would be a case.
Okay.
Yeah. Because usually there's it's kind of like when there was the assassination attempt of the president, or the Trump, the past president, a few months ago. It was there were all these reports hours before of some suspicious person in the area, and nobody did anything.
Right.
And so that would, and someone's
That's a
hurt or
neglect
killed.
I'm talking about.
Yep, exactly. That could be a case where someone could get monetary compensation for.
How about a victim, and this apparently occurs not rarely, but often. They're a little concerned about their identity. I think you know where I'm going here.
Yeah.
And they don't want the publicity. Can someone file under pseudonym? I believe that's what they call it.
Yes.
A Jane Doe or a John Doe.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because maybe that'll build some confidence for people who really deserve to be compensated, yet they want to be in the background. They don't want their identity revealed. They don't want the attention, and they don't want repercussions as well. It's called pseudonym, correct?
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Pseudonym, Jane Doe, John Doe,
Okay.
something not your real name so that you're not publicly identified.
I think that's important for the listeners to know this.
And I think it's
All
a
of
huge
it.
concern for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like you see on the news, once something is out there, like someone's plastered on the news, or when you file a lawsuit, the court docket where that lawsuit is on is public.
Sure.
And so if you know how to log in, you can access anything. So a little tip, if you're a little nosy, want to know what's going on,
Yeah, yeah,
go on
exactly,
that court docket
exactly.
and search on people, because you can find all kinds of things. Pay a couple dollars and get all the little details as to all the cases. But anyway, yeah, I think a lot of people are concerned. They don't go out telling everyone. They're not posting on social media that they're a survivor of sexual abuse or sexual
That's
assault
for sure.
or any other type of crime. And so people are concerned, if I file a lawsuit, I don't want my coworkers, my friends to know
Nobody.
what I've been through. And so there typically is a process. We have to file a motion to get it approved by the judge, but there's a process by which we can file a motion to file under Jane Doe, John Doe, so that they're not publicly identified in those court documents. And really that's another, when I was talking about autonomy and the choices that a survivor has, that's one of the conversations that I have at the start of the case. If there's always a chance you could probably settle a case before a lawsuit starts, before
Sure.
you file that public court document. And that's another thing that I talk to my clients about. Is that what you want me to try and explore before
Settle out of court.
Right, before we file a lawsuit in court. And just because you file a lawsuit in court doesn't mean that you can't settle later.
Right.
But once that court document is out there, it's out there and it's not coming back.
It's a matter of public record at that point.
Exactly. And so there are I think a lot of people, they want that anonymity. They want to have the choice in when their name gets out there. And so that is a lot of a lot of times in my cases I am filing under a Jane Doe, John Doe.
Now, let's take that individual, and you file under a Jane Doe or a John Doe, and it's very effective. You have a happy, a pleased victim that at least are compensated for what they went through, traumatic experience. When this occurs under the judicial process in court, the jury, are they is that name Jane Doe, John Doe is that person, their real true identity, protected from the jurors as well? Boy, that's a great question. I'm glad I just thought of that.
It can be.
You got to get a life, son.
No, it can be. I mean, when you see the criminal cases on the news and you have like the Sandusky cases, it was like John Doe 1, John Doe 2.
The Penn State incident. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And so it can be. I think, again, in these cases, in the cases that I would handle, I try and do things in a trauma-informed way, which we'll talk about what that is in a little bit. But in that, I want to give my clients the choice. So if for them, it would make them even comfortable to, in front of a jury, use their name versus their John Doe, Jane Doe versus their actual name, that's something I'm going to fight for and I'm going to ask the judge for. Usually, you're not as concerned with the jury. It's more like the public.
Exactly.
A jury probably isn't going to know their coworkers or their friends or be posting on social media, John Doe or Jane Doe is actually, this person.
Exactly. But there is jury tampering, as we know.
Sure.
There's groups of bad people out there. They're going to try and find if they can get to one juror and get the information that really shouldn't be revealed, but it is. I mean, it's happened, and it'll continue. These are measures to maybe protect a victim that way. If that information isn't revealed, depositions can be given, can be taken. I'm assuming. I'm only guessing, and you give us the accurate answer. Not in court, but at home or someplace comfortable, and it can be brought in as evidence. Correct?
So it can be brought in as evidence at the trial, but typically in these abuse assault cases, we'll file what's called a protective order, which means that any deposition testimony, it's hard, honestly, for witnesses to refer to somebody as John Doe and their name is really Michael or something.
Yes.
And so that people can naturally get tripped up. It becomes confusing when now you're talking about Michael's mom, Carol, but now you're saying Jane Doe's somebody. Like, it just gets very confusing. And so there's a protective order typically in place that those deposition transcripts, which is deposition is under oath testimony, where it's like a question and answer session of the witnesses of what happened in the case.
Yes.
And so that can only be used in the case. You can't send that to the news media. You can't send that or post that publicly online.
Great.
Anything that is filed publicly, there's an agreement that the names are going to be redacted. And so you're not going to even like parents' names of a minor would be redacted. So you can't, by default, figure out who John or Jane Doe is.
Sure. Are you learning things out there? Because I'll tell you what, I've already picked up some things.
I'm trying to get this all in there. It's like a sponge.
It's great. It's great. And lawyers who were representing the victim, as Laura here, I really didn't give, I've been in law for a long time, as you have, Charlie. You don't really think about this aspect. That's so important. It's sensitive information, but it's also protecting the victims that were they were accosted and injured and mentally, emotionally, so physically.
Yeah.
And it's so important. It's so important that we have this type of representation and practice of law.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize. I think, now with the Me Too movement and certain cases that have been more public in the last 5 or 10 years, people are understanding that there can be civil claims. But, I hope that through this program, and I do a lot of posting on social media and stuff too to educate about crime victim rights, that I hope that as time goes on, more people will understand so that they can be supported financially as well.
Absolutely. You're listening to Laura Laughlin here on Let's Go Places, right in the beautiful showroom at Team Toyota, Paul Muller's spot right here that I've been here for, I can't believe it's 16 years. And we have a great program we'll talk to you later about, the Heroes program that many of our listeners are aware of, that help our police, fire, military, medical. You're one of the recipients.
Yes.
We've helped you many times. I don't know why, but we have. Just kidding. But at any rate,
you get me out of the home on weekends.
Yeah, it does. But right here on WBCB 1490, 107.3 on the dial, Bree, who does a splendid job as our engineer over here. We're just so happy to have Laura because it's an aspect of law that we really don't talk about too much. So we're going to be talking more about it, not just this show, but we want to extend this information out to you so that you can share it. And when you have questions, you can get back to us on this, this aspect, this particular subject, which is so important. But we'll return with Laura. We have a lot more to pull right out of her mind here and her experience so that you'll learn a lot more about this aspect of law, protecting the victims of a crime and other things as well. Don't go anywhere. We'll return after a few words from our sponsors.
Hi, Paul Muller here, and there's never been a better time to be part of the team. New car inventory is back. We have over 100 new Toyotas ready to drive home today with some of our most popular models available. And with a huge selection of dependable certified used Toyotas, our pre-owned departments are ready to make a deal that works for you. Plus, our award-winning service centers will have you in and out and back on the road in no time. Visit one of our 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton, or online at teamtoyota.net.
Hey, this is Jonesy. Kick off your Thursday and Friday evenings in style. Join me for an eclectic freeform mix of the hits and beyond. It's a happening, a musical journey. It's the Glenn Jones Radio Experience, right here on 1490 WBCB and 107.3 FM, Thursday and Friday, 5 to 6 p.m., directly following the legendary Jerry Blavitt. Radio, the way it ought to be.
Opinions matter, and so does yours. Hi, I'm Joe Fabrizi, inviting you to join us every Monday at 1 p.m. for Opinions Matter, right here on 1490 AM WBCB. Opinions Matter is now live streamed at WBCB1490.com. We want to hear from you because your opinion does matter.
Great. Hey, we're back with Let's Go Places right here in the showroom at Team Toyota, 746 East Lincoln Highway. It's a great place to buy a car. You can come in and see me, Tom Mellon, if you're police, fire, military, medical, and all family members. I've been doing it for 16 years and helped more than 3,000 people. Wow. Members, our heroes. God bless them. And Paul looks at this program with a preponderance of altruism. How do you like that?
Staying up with the dictionary.
Yeah. Well, when I said that to Paul one day, the owner, he says, I don't know whether to thank you or punch you in the nose. What are you saying? But at any rate, we're back here with Laura Laughlin, and let's get back to what we were just talking about.
Yes. So I think one of the things I thought was important to mention is that, this is not really necessarily case related, but just handling these cases over the course of my career, you learn a lot. Like, I'm a mom myself. In addition to being a lawyer, I'm a mom. And so there's like certain things that I want to teach my kids about and stuff to be able to prevent abuse.
Of course.
Nobody wants to be a victim of abuse.
No.
Not for your kid, not for yourself, but it happens. Like, the statistics are pretty high on people who are sexually abused as kids and as adults, and it's something that a lot of people don't talk about. But the more that we talk about it, the more information that can get out there, the shame kind of breaks down, because it's not like people are alone anymore. They're realizing there's a lot of people out there, and through filing lawsuits and filing cases, that's also putting it out there. It's like these things don't have to stay hidden anymore. It's finally exposing it so that things can change and things can get better and safer.
Thanks to you, with the law that you practice, it'll make it even, more aware, make people more aware of what their rights are and how they can prevent these types of activities.
I think in the end of the day, like a lot of people, nobody wants this happening in our schools. Nobody wants people to be hurt or children to be harmed. But, if people don't know, it's lawsuits like the ones that I bring or cases like the ones that I bring that finally are like light bulb going off. People are being held accountable, and changes are happening to make sure that this happens less and less over time.
And educating our children is so important as well, right?
100%.
Yeah, we were talking about stranger danger, but let's talk a little bit about that. And there's so many forms of abuse: sexual, physical, even verbal abuse. It just, as you're being raised in the confines, mom and dad is there, your aunts, your uncles are there, the corporal abuse, corporal punishment, physical punishment. It happens. It has occurred over the years in so many homes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, a lot of people think of abuse of I know when I was growing up in the 80s, it was like stranger danger. Don't go into the white van that has, the candy sign on the outside or the free puppies or something.
Told you to get rid of that van.
That's right. Yeah, right.
Right, don't get into Tom's van.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But the reality is that, yes, don't get into those vans either. But the reality is that I think it's 93% of abuse occurs from someone the victim knows and trusts.
Incredible.
And so that's, whether it's, intrafamilial, like a family person, a coach, a teacher,
Neighbor,
a mentor, someone in the church or religious organization. Unfortunately, perpetrators seek out these positions where they can be around kids. To groom them, which we said we're going to talk about grooming. Grooming's like this process by which the perpetrator starts to break down those boundaries and those walls for victims. They not only groom the victim, but they're grooming all the people in the circle. So that
Absolutely.
That's why you see on the news and you're like, oh, I can't believe that teacher or that coach, or like we talked about Jerry Sandusky again.
Yeah, such a nice person.
It. Yeah, all the good that they do for children. Well, there was a reason for it.
There's a reason for it, right.
And so, you have to be aware that it's not just the people in the white vans with the free puppy, free candy sign. It's the people who, you look out for boundary crossing. Are they buying your child gifts? Are they trying to get them a loan? Are they, I tell my son, I have a 5-year-old, I tell him, no secrets, no surprises. No one should be telling you to keep a secret from mom or dad. We have something called a safety circle where he identifies 3 people in his life, in addition to his parents, that he could talk to about anything. And those people know too that, my son may come to you if something is inappropriate or uncomfortable or whatever, so that you know that you're a safe person that he can go to and talk to.
How important is that to have that type of a circle for every child out there?
Yeah, I mean, because kids don't grow up being equipped to know how to protect themselves. And frankly, it's not a kid's job to protect themselves.
No, it's not.
It's the parents and adults in their life to keep the kids safe.
And a lot of times these kids may think it's okay to, for the verbal abuse or the physical abuse, and it's not.
Right.
It really isn't.
Yeah, you can't expect a kid to stand up.
That's why you have to communicate constantly.
Yeah.
You should never allow things to happen without you discussing it with them.
Awareness.
If they come home and you could tell that maybe there's something wrong,
Yeah.
You got to sit them down and talk to them.
Yeah. Having that open line of communication is
so important.
If your child thinks that you're afraid to discuss things, like calling, this is kind of a unique example, but like calling your private parts by actual names versus these fancy names, your kid's going to be like, you can't even talk to me directly about this. How am I going to tell you that somebody tried to cross a boundary with me?
Exactly.
And so you need to have those open communications. One thing that I push for too is, if your kid is having a play date, just say, have a check-in afterwards. Like, how were things? Did anything happen that made you uncomfortable? Where were you playing? Like, before a play date, I would ask the parents, make sure that they're not playing in closed-doored rooms.
Yes. That's one of the major
Did
functions.
you do any new games today?
Yeah.
There's a way of asking without pushing, without saying, did this happen or this. You could always say, did you do any new games today?
Yeah.
And they'll tell you. They're innocent. They'll tell you,
Right.
But if they won't tell you if you don't ask them.
Exactly. It's having that open line of communication. Nobody wants that sit-down talk of what happened. That's not going to get anywhere for kids. You want to have that open dialogue where you're calm, collected. It's like no big deal.
The worst thing though is put fear into them.
Of course.
Let them be fearful of saying it. That's my opinion. Fearful of saying anything to you.
That's the truth.
You want them to have that open communication that they can say.
And some kids, they don't want that person to be sought after and hurt in any way. They may be not even realizing it, protecting a person who's the villain.
And that's usually what happens because, like I said, if they know them, they care about them.
Yeah.
So they don't want that person to get in trouble. They don't want them to get hurt. But that's why it's so important as parents or as adults in a child's life to make sure that you're keeping an eye out on these one-on-one potential interactions. That's usually how it happens, is there starts to be this grooming process where they're, like I said, getting the child more comfortable, getting them alone more, opening up, to them, tell me more about what's going on. They act like they care about them, which then paves the way for them to be able to cross these boundary lines and abuse. And so, that's a lot of the cases where I have, like in schools, group homes, they're vulnerable children who don't have adults in their life that are having those conversations like we talked about. And perpetrators, they seek that out.
Oh,
they
absolutely
find
they do.
people like that they know are the more easy victims, and it's absolutely terrible. But that's why I think all adults should have some understanding of what are the red flags to look out for to stop the abuse before it happens or continues.
As a police officer, Charlie, you can attest to this, and they're indelible marks in my mind that I'll always remember. Certain jobs that I went on. I remember going into a house, and the son, he's only 5 years old, and he's got 4 marks on the side of his temple. So it was a domestic call, row home, neighbors called, there was a fight going on. And I go in, we try to calm everyone down. You can see who the perpetrator is, I can, right away by judging what's going on. The wife's got a blemish on her face, so there's abuse going on. But what really struck me was when I looked at the one little boy and I took him in the kitchen. I said, how are you? I tried to make him relax because he's nervous and he's, the family's traumatized because of this one idiot that's in there. The father, supposed to be one developing good judgment and character, and he's not.
Yeah.
So I asked him, I said, what happened to your... And he didn't even realize it. I said, no, you have a few marks on your head. You know what his answer was to me? He said, I was bad and my father had to do that to me.
Oh.
So he's already accepted that one incident. I'm thinking, how long has this been going on?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, he had to do that because I was bad.
Oh. Breaks your
So,
heart.
yeah, and I mean, he's defending his father. I'm in the kitchen, and, obviously my inner feelings, I want to rip this guy apart,
Oh, yeah.
But, I'm wearing a badge. We have to do the right thing always. He was eventually arrested. We had to go to the wife. The wife was telling me that, well, she couldn't really do anything because he's the breadwinner. So she knew that all of these offenses were occurring, the assaults, and the sexual abuse as well. We find out later on. It was very complicated because how do you get them to turn on someone that they look up to, that they're looking up to and love?
A lot of therapy. Like for my clients, like I know in the beginning, especially child victims, even when they become adults, it's so ingrained, that grooming process runs so deep that they're afraid of their perpetrator. Even though they know what they did was wrong and they were clearly hurt by it and traumatized, they don't want them to go to jail. Like they're afraid of what's going to happen. But through therapy, from what I've seen, is it can start to kind of break down those barriers again and allow them to heal and recognize what happened to them. Wasn't their fault, that it was all this
How many homes we go in there where the woman was being abused, and you take the guy away, and then 2 days later they're back together
right back again.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so complicated.
They go right back to the abuse.
And more repercussions, bad repercussions, because he's coming back.
They start yelling at you. Like when you're taking the husband, they're all beat up.
Oh, yeah, that happens.
They're all beat up. You're taking the husband out, and they start screaming at you, grabbing you, leave him alone.
It's a similar process to like the psychology behind it.
And the mind.
Why do people stay? There's, a whole, like every time, whether it's financial sometimes where they don't have the means to be able to get out and to save themselves, or it's similar to what I was talking about with grooming. The same thing goes on with an abuser in domestic violence situations, that it's not so easy. They're like, but they love me, and I get that too. Again, therapy can be really helpful in those scenarios to help break those chains that a perpetrator or abuser had done.
Once that victim can be convinced that the therapy is necessary, or it will never stop, and could lead to even more serious of an affliction.
When you're helping one of these people, is there a way that you get involved? One of the victims I'm talking about, that you get involved with therapy during their lawsuit or whatever you want to call it. Do you set up programs for the victims for that kind of therapy.
I do make sure that if they want to be, that they're in therapy. So like, I don't just handle a case. Like, my goal in it obviously is to get monetary compensation to make changes so things can be safer in the future.
Sure.
But I want my clients to feel like they started out as a victim and now by the end of the case, they're a survivor.
Oh, good.
They're somebody who has like transitioned and kind of can heal through this process.
Of course.
When I say, I'm a trauma-informed lawyer, I try and do everything I possibly can to not further traumatize my client because
Exactly.
what they've been through has already.
That's what I was worrying about.
Let's talk about your phone numbers because I'm sure a
Sure.
lot of people are screaming, how do we reach Laura? Well, now we're going to talk about it now.
That's just Philly.
So
I'm
jot
in-
this number down.
Yeah, so I'm in Philly. I work for a law firm called Messa Associates, but I handle cases all over Pennsylvania, all over New Jersey, and I've also handled cases outside of those areas as well, depending on the case. You can get like a local lawyer to sponsor you. I have a case now in Virginia. I had a case in Pittsburgh. So, there are cases I'll handle all over depending on the case.
Sure.
The number for our law firm is 215-568-3500, 215-568-3500, and you can ask for Laura Laughlin. Or I'm all over social media. I have a Facebook, Instagram, a TikTok, like we were talking about.
Yes.
Where I try and post a lot of information that can be helpful to people,
Sure.
both on their rights and what I do on a day-to-day basis. So on all of those social media platforms, you can find me at L Laughlin. So it's LLAUGHLINESQ, like Esquire, L Laughlin ESQ, at any of those platforms.
Any of those platforms. And we're going to give you this information before we end our show today because it's important. So that all this information you're hearing today that's interesting, it's effective, so that we can catch more of these culprits and control crime. That's the important thing.
Yes.
So that there's not as many victims that are out there. Unfortunately, it will continue. It's part of the culture of life.
Yeah, there's always going to be bad people out there.
Yeah, there's always going to. We just need to protect ourselves as best possible. So once again, that phone number, I'm going to take a quick
Sure,
break.
at 215-568-3500 and LLAUGHLINESQ on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook.
Listen up. We're going to have some more information before we end our program. Bree, what do we have, about another 15 minutes?
We got 15 left?
When we return, so we can share more of this information. It's so important. Victims of crime, there are people out there such as Laura that you can reach and get the proper assistance that you need. We'll return after a few more moments, after a few words from our sponsor on WBCB 1490 and 107.3 on the dial. Don't go anywhere. We're not finished.
Hi, Paul Muller here, and there's never been a better time to be part of the team. New car inventory is back. We have over 100 new Toyotas ready to drive home today with some of our most popular models available. And with a huge selection of dependable certified used Toyotas, our pre-owned departments are ready to make a deal that works for you. Plus, our award-winning service centers will have you in and out and back on the road in no time. Visit one of our 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton, or online at teamtoyota.net.
Are you a parrot head? Not that kind. That's more like it. If you're this kind of parrot head, don't forget to check out the Denny-O Polka Show every Saturday from 9 a.m. to noon right here on 1490 WBCB and online at WBCB1490.com.
Hey, this is Jonesy. Kick off your Thursday and Friday evenings in style. Join me for an eclectic freeform mix of the hits and beyond. It's a happening, a musical journey. It's the Glenn Jones Radio Experience, right here on 1490 WBCB and 107.3 FM, Thursday and Friday, 5 to 6 p.m., directly following the legendary Jerry Blavitt. Radio, the way it ought to be.
How about sidekick abuse?
Yeah, there you go. We're back. Let's go places with Laura Laughlin, who is an attorney that represents people who have been victimized, and that's so important. And we're going to talk, because I don't want to be talking so much. There's so much information that we need additional information to get out. Let's talk about children predators as well.
Yeah, and so we've been talking throughout this program of, adults harming children.
Yes.
And adult perpetrators, which you'll see a lot. But there is, I think, something people really don't talk about is child-on-child sexual abuse.
Jesus.
Which
Man.
that's actually like a pretty big contingent about what happens, about people that are children who are abused. There's a lot of other children that are committing these acts. And I think depending on the age of the child, there's a different mindset. When you have an adult, you always know that that is wrong. For some children, they're young enough where unfortunately something bad was done to them and they're just mimicking, what happened on somebody else now. And so they can still be charged with crimes in like the juvenile system and
Sure.
stuff, and get them, instead of maybe punishing them, get them the help that they need.
Therapy that they need.
Right.
Sure.
So it's not an issue of recidivism where they're doing it again to somebody else.
Yes.
It's nipping it in the bud so that this child can get the help that they need so they don't do this to anybody else. But not only can there be a case involving an adult predator, there can also be one when a child sexually abuses somebody. That can be in like a group home, a youth sports organization, churches or synagogues or other religious organizations, and schools. If you don't have the proper supervision in place to make sure that kids aren't doing this to other kids, that can hold a school or an organization responsible as well.
So the educational process is very important if it's brought out in the classroom in a sensitive way,
Sure.
but to make people aware, hey, if you're doing this, cut it. It's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, even at the high school level, I've had cases where, a teacher throws on a movie, puts kids in the back of the room, and it's dark, and during the class time, kids are getting abused by other kids.
Oh, my goodness.
And you'd think, I think a lot of people are like, well, why wouldn't someone scream? If anyone touched me, I would scream. And that's,
Fear.
Yeah, that's not the way that it happens.
Right.
They're like, oh my gosh, it's like this
Peer
freeze
pressure.
response.
There's so many reasons.
Yeah.
Fear is
Yeah.
always there. Peer pressure.
Yeah, the retaliation.
But bullying, does bullying seem to lead into some of these other problems?
It
So
does.
when a kid's a bad bully,
Again, like I was saying before, like there are certain kids that are unfortunately are more vulnerable to abuse. The confident kids that are out there speaking up for themselves, standing up for others, they're not usually the victim. Sometimes they are, but it's usually,
Really?
the quiet kids that don't have, a circle of support for them, or they don't have anybody to go to. And even like child-on-child sexual abuse, that's common too. It's the ones where the parents aren't paying attention. They're letting them in the basement with the door shut, play for hours on end, or bringing older kids with younger kids. And
Sure.
again, it's not every kid, like not every kid is a bad kid or every kid has issues, but you don't know which ones do and which ones don't. And so you have to, as a parent, take those steps. And as a teacher, as an administrator at school, be putting these things in place so that there aren't these one-on-one opportunities where if someone is going to perpetrate, they don't have that opportunity to do so.
Education and awareness is so important. It begins at home. It extends to the teachers in the
100%.
classrooms.
Yeah.
And even for the children, the older children, to be made aware.
Yeah.
So as you pointed out, maybe some of them just don't think that it's anything serious.
Yeah.
And I can't understand how, but some of them don't.
Yeah.
and parents have to understand they're not your friends. They're your children.
Yes.
Too many parents think that they're a kid's friend.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's a bad mistake, especially for young ladies and all, and the mothers. They overlook so many things. You're their parent first,
Yeah.
and then their friend. And sometimes they get it the other way around, and it's no good. And like you say, they let them in the basement. They let them do things that they know that they really shouldn't be doing it, but they want to be their buddy, and
Sure.
they let them do it, and that's wrong.
Even for teachers, like
Yeah.
you're the adult. You have to lay down the rules to
Right.
keep kids safe. Kids can't keep themselves safe. It's the parent to have or the teacher or the coach or the other people in the youth serving organization. It's your job as the organization, as the adult in their life, to be able to set this up so that things like this don't happen. There is no opportunity to abuse.
Sure. Reporting these types of offenses.
Mm-hmm.
When a child is aware, they may not be the victim, but they know of someone who is being traumatized. How is it reported? When should they go? The answer is immediately.
Sure.
But Do they go to the parents? Do they go to their parents, or do they go? Because sometimes the parents will say, "Oh, we'll handle it. Thanks for letting us know," and nothing gets done. I hate to say it, but
yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, and I think that's also like a lack of education for parents, like parents not knowing any better and what the process really is. And so generally, in our school system, for example, there are people that are mandatory reporters, that if there is a suspicion of child sexual abuse, child physical abuse, they have to report it. It's
Absolutely.
Not, I've done like videos on this on social media of like, it is not your job as a mandatory reporter to investigate and say, well, I don't know about this person. I heard this report, but they don't seem like someone who had hurt somebody. I'm going to investigate a little further before I report this. That is not your job.
Sure.
And that's where I see sometimes in cases like there was a prior report. There was several prior reports, but no one did anything about it. And so
how many times we hear that?
Yeah. I mean, in Pennsylvania, there are like child abuse lines, like a child protective hotline, child line or whatever. You can also report to like school administration. Usually every school and public school should have a Title IX coordinator. There's someone that is supposed to accept reports of abuse and assault or suspected abuse and assault. In Pennsylvania and New Jersey, frankly, most states, the way that it works, and even in Pennsylvania, there is something called a Child Advocacy Center, which is a child-friendly environment where if there is a suspected abuse or assault of a child, they will be interviewed where it's video recorded. And people like prosecutors, detectives, the police, they can all watch it in like another room. So that before we had these children's advocacy centers, kids would be interviewed over and over. They'd have to talk to the prosecutor. They'd have to talk to the detective. They'd have to talk to a therapist. Now, this can be recorded, their interview, by like a child forensic interviewer who is trained to not suggest answers, but just ask the questions and allow the child to say what happened.
Sure.
And then that video is used in the prosecution or whatever to be able to help put the offender behind bars. And so that's typically how the process works.
That makes sense. Well, our time is coming to an end. I told you how quick this hour goes.
It does go fast.
It goes by quickly, but hopefully you'll come back to us and we'll cover some other things that still have to be revealed so that it can be helpful. The last thing I'm thinking is if there's just a quick thought, if there's a kid that ever suspects that another child is being abused, physically abused, sexually abused in any way, write a note down with the name of the person that's causing something to another person and hand it to the teacher. Bing. So maybe it'll start that way, some type of communication.
Yeah, I always say, like, maybe don't start with, you can report to a teacher, report to, like, your safe circle that we talked about earlier, but sometimes teachers aren't trained on that.
Okay.
And so the higher up, the better. Like, principal, Title IX coordinator, guidance counselor, tell your parent, tell a safe person, a safe adult in your life so that they can then pass it along to the proper authorities.
Perfect. Laura, give our listeners, once again, your information as they can reach out to you.
Sure. So again, I'm Laura Laughlin. I'm based in Philadelphia, but handle cases across Pennsylvania and New Jersey. I work at a law firm called Messa Associates, M-E-S-S-A and Associates. My social media is L Laughlin, so LLAUGHLINESQ, and my office number is 215-568-3500, and our website is messalaw.com.
Thank you so much. I want to just give a quick shout out to the Pendle Borough. There's a walkathon that's going to be on October the 9th. I don't even know my own handwriting. It's October the 9th?
It looks like a 9 to me.
Yeah, October the 9th.
Let me get my cheaters on here.
Yeah, it's in the Pendle Borough. It's a walkathon that will occur at 9 p.m. Listen to me, 9 a.m.
Don't go there at 9 p.m.
No, 9 p.m. You're not going to find anybody walking. Well, maybe you will. But it's a walkathon right here in the outskirts here, or right inside Pendle Borough. It's Our Lady of Grace School right here in the Pendle Borough. It'll begin at 9 a.m. For further information, because all the proceeds for this walkathon will benefit student education and student assistance, financial assistance. The number to call is 215-757-5287. That's 215-757-5287. Well, that's a wrap, Charlie.
Good show.
I certainly thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
We want to bring you back.
Have some more information.
Oh, my God.
It's all up here. I could talk for hours about this.
Laura, it's so good.
That's all right. We have hours.
Yeah, we do. We do. So on behalf of everyone here, on behalf of Paul Muller, who sponsors the show of Let's Go Places, myself, Bill Redner, Bree, Charlie, you know my name, Tom Mellon, be safe. Jerry, I'll be coming home to walk the dog soon because I know she's going to be at the front door waiting for me. But most importantly, be safe, stay well, don't text while you drive, and most importantly, God bless America.